Hello, everybody. Good evening. Thank you so much for joining me. A couple of things I had to double check, and I did await the message that just now came through from the German Foreign Affairs Office, and we're going to review that in a second. But first, hello. Hi, Stephen. Hello. Good evening, and all. Happy Thanksgiving. Yes. Hi, Tidy Whitey. Hi, Timmy. Hello. Yes. Happy Thanksgiving week. Maybe today was the last day, your last work day. Certainly in New York, a lot of preparations are going forward for the Thanksgiving parade. Tomorrow, I will go and record how all those balloons are being prepared and blown up tomorrow in Upper West Side. So by tomorrow night, I'm going to have some footage that nobody will claim copyright for. Yes. And I'll present it to you. It's pretty spectacular. If you live in New York, that's the biggest thing you actually wait for. The day before from 1 to 6, if you're interested, on Upper West Side, that's where you see all of these things being prepared, and you can see it in person, how humongous those are, because like we're used to watching the Thanksgiving parade on television. This is nothing new unless you're new to the United States, but this is pretty cool. So I'm going to have some footage by tomorrow night. Hi, Irene. Hello. Thank you for joining. This is awesome. And I know I'm late, but I was waiting for something that indeed came out. And let's take it one news story, one by one, so to speak. And as I always say, we focus on global affairs. So if you do live in the United States, or perhaps you live in Europe or Middle East or anywhere else, this will be still interesting for you. Yes, we're going to talk about national news in the US as well, because especially nowadays, United States lack of diplomacy is affecting everyone. And in one way or another, it will be affecting you. So it's important to be factually informed. And facts is my personal love language, and everyone's here as well. So we'll focus on that. Today's news stories, of course, you can see it here. Of course, we're going to talk about Trump pardoning a Turkey and increasing his number of pardons to over 1,600. Turkey is certainly not the one, but perhaps the one that got it for free. On average, the pardon is costing around $970,000, but it does increase with the level of urgency, if you know what I mean. And yeah, we're going to talk about Driscoll, as you see him here on the lower end. This is our now main representative for the talks with Russia. Then you see Putin. He arrived in Kyrgyzstan today. Watch his review and whatever he did there. Upper right corner. This is a big boo-boom that Ukraine orchestrated. They blew up something that Russia was very proud to create. They were testing this ultrasonic and some laser, weapons and planes, and Ukraine knocked it out. And then in the middle, you see Kyiv has been attacked last night. Also, right now, Kyiv is hours ahead of us, and so they're experiencing another night of bombardments. And then, yes, of course, here's Trump and Melania Trump with the turkey. So first things first, since it is Thanksgiving week, a record 81.8 million people will be traveling this week in the United States alone. So they are expected to travel at least 50 miles within the US between today and December 1st. This is according to AAA or AAA. Now, the FAA is bracing for its busiest Thanksgiving week in 15 years. Yes, the shutdown is over, but the lack of air traffic controllers is not over by far. So the TSA expects to screen 17.8 million passengers, many of whom will be traveling comfortably, despite Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy's recent pajama shaming comments. And I did show you the videos prior, and certainly those are in your newsletters. He is now on a mission to demand you not to wear anything comfortable. You should wear a suit and a tie and a bow tie and heels and whatever you're into, just to, again, deflect from the point that he does not want to make, is the lack of FAA workers, TSA workers, and why you actually stuck in traffic and stuck in boarding your flight, right? Now, they forecast 73.2 million people will drive, 1.8%. from last year, or up 1.8% from last year. Worst hours for traffic in major metro areas are this afternoon and tomorrow afternoon. So please try to avoid that. Bus, rail, cruise travel is expected to jump 8.5%. This is interesting. Not a big jump, right, on average, just because we do not really welcome here tourists anymore as of late. So now, complicating matters, and please be careful. Most of US will face severe storms, heavy rain, snow in the Rockies, and with possible disruptions across air and road travel. So now, there are reports also coming from the White House at this point on the level of rumors that senior White House aides and cabinet heads are sharing with the press that they are bracing for a major personnel shakeup. As insiders say, Trump is growing increasingly unhappy with economic messaging, among also other issues. A shakeup could include a new chief of staff, so Susie Wiles, whom Trump praised, a week ago, saying that she is the one deciding on the fate of different countries, and she's the one that can end the country, quote unquote. Again, I'm quoting Trump, who praised her, and as we know, this is usually a kiss of death. And when he says that somebody has this big authority and those ceasefires do not really uphold, which of course he knew before, but some heads should be rolling, and certainly this is expected now in the beginning of next year. Of course, he's never the problem himself. His Gatsby parties are never the problem of economic messaging, but Susie Wiles. Okay. Now, good news, and I want to get this out right away. The European Parliament has approved Europe's first ever European Defense Industry Program. Why does it matter? Because European Union is an economic union. It's not NATO. It's not a defense alliance. But what they do is they decide on investments, upon investments, right? There are receivers countries, there are givers, right? So you balance the economic level on the continent itself. And so this here is important because now creating this specific first ever, again, European defense industry program is designed to first strengthen EU's defense industry, boost joint procurement, which is really important if you want to rely less on United States, also ramping up manufacturing, again, deals with the same problem, and it will increase support for Ukraine, which again is vital and important because we do know that the security of Ukraine, the sovereignty of Ukrainian borders, and sovereignty of Ukraine itself will decide upon Europeans' future and Europe's future. Also, Europe confirmed that the updated Ukraine peace plan, we should make a deal and refer to those 28 points as a surrender wish list by Kremlin. But Europe said now it is shorter and partially reflects Ukrainian interests. What alarms me personally is the partially part. Ukraine's largely agreed with specific details, but some details need to be finalized, right? This is the official messaging. And then there is the clickbait nature, right? Because the media these days is running on clickbait. The commercial, especially in US, right? America runs on Dunkin'. America runs on clickbait. And every time you are shocked, into your disbelief and you click that thing, and then just to realize that, oh, this video is not even about the headline or whatever was on this cover, right? Oh, this article is not even that what they promised me with the headline. You made them money. And so clickbait is how media generates money. Please keep that in your mind whenever you are bombarded with those clickbaity headlines. There's an agreement, Zelensky agreed, Zelensky this, Zelensky that, oh my god, the war is over, the war is starting, people are dying. Bottom line is there is no agreement that has been finalized, and there is no agreement from Ukraine. There is no agreement, no consideration to agree to something, or an intention to even consider agreeing to something from the Russian side. So whenever we focus on, oh, Zelensky will be begging Trump to show up in Mar-a-Lago and, to sign something over Thanksgiving. If Zelensky wants this type of PR to deflect Ukrainian media from the corruption thing, and maybe he will use it, or his people will think this is a good idea, and he shows up and signs something, okay, but this ceasefire and this war is not between the United States and Ukraine. It is between Ukraine and Russia. So unless you have Russia's signature and Ukraine's signature, what does it matter what US signed and whatever Ukraine agreed to? And this is something that we can observe as a change in Ukraine, specifically President Zelensky's behavior. What Ukraine learned these days is how not to piss off Trump. And you piss him off by saying, piss off, right? He tells you, give up territory. You're like, my ass, I'm not doing that. Let's do ceasefire. No, they're bombing us. Let me teach you. This person is not teachable. He cannot be taught anything. He is not interested to be taught anything. He's not interested in reading, being informed, learning new perspectives, seeing things from a different angle. He should be only entertained. And he is entertained if you praise him. That's the only entertainment that he loves. So what Ukraine is doing, you want ceasefire? Good, we agree. You want to reduce our military personnel to 800,000? Sure. Yes, it is illegal. Yes, it goes against UN Charter. It goes against a bunch of other things, as I explained to you. But currently, right now, in the middle of a war, Ukraine accounts 900,000 soldiers. So reducing it to 800,000 soldiers is, nothing. It's sort of the same thing that Trump agreed to with the president of Mexico, Sheinbaum, to put their forces at the southern border. And she's like, sure. And meanwhile, they agreed to a lower number than the number of forces that were already there. But because Trump he has no clue, nor he's interested in having one. He's interested to being praised by people whom he does not see as equal. Then there are other demographic, that's where he enjoys praising them, right? Those are usually authoritarian leaders, murderers, and others who take force with power and by power. Because Trump, unfortunately for him, was born in the United States and has to go by our standards. He's really trying to shape our constitution and violate it and, threaten others into silence and obedience and some type of numbness. But unfortunately for him, this doesn't really work here. He's trying to start a war or this and that. It just doesn't stick. It's different DNA here, right? So he does praise those, folks from Saudi Arabia and Russia and China and North Korea and, even Belarus. So what Ukraine is doing, okay, he's proposing this, sure. You're proposing that? Sure. Knowing fully well that Russia will not be signing anything. So if you do see Zelensky committing this pilgrimage to some type of Mar-a-Lago resort and signing something, we always have to see, is there another signature, right? So always follow the money, but also follow the facts and start thinking critically, because there's a lot of clickbait that you and I are feeding with every single click. What I personally can recommend you is please take off those notifications from your phone where you're, I have Apple phone, maybe you have Android or other type of phones where you constantly have news notifications with breaking news. None of this is breaking. Nobody's going to inform you about some type of agreement in the middle of the night. It's usually same refurbished crap that you don't really need. So maybe you should decide when to consume the news and how, right? And the methods for it. So now this new plan has now 19 points. Europe does the best job not to release it or leak it. As we know yesterday, and as I reported to you yesterday, it was Axios, right, that signed a 3-day deal with Kremlin that leaked this 28-point of surrender for Ukraine. Certainly very much orchestrated by Kremlin, paid or not our job to decide, but this is what it was. So U.S. Army Secretary Dan Driscoll, who is now the main envoy to handle all of this, right? I showed you his picture, is right here on the lower left. He traveled this time to Abu Dhabi. And what happened actually this weekend, right? The end of last week, while Driscoll was in Kyiv delivering this plan for surrender to Zelensky, meanwhile Witkoff was traveling to Kremlin together with Jared Kushner. And Jared shows up when money's at stake. He's like that, animal. When he smells blood, he's very interested. Shark, if you will. And so they were in Moscow. Then today, the reports came in actual audio recordings that Witkoff, before Trump did welcome Zelensky on October 17th in the White House and the Oval Office, and all this debacle happened. Witkoff did have a conversation with the Russians, asking Putin to call Trump and even providing points, right? Talking points, how to convince Trump to follow pro-Russian agenda. So Kremlin, congratulations, your guy is working, or your guys are working. So in Abu Dhabi, Russian officials called the revised 19-point plan a failure. Bloomberg reported, everybody else reported. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov said, quote, "No updated peace plan for Ukraine consisting of 19 points has been received in Moscow." They're pretending they're not. I mean, the best you can get out of them is, we don't even know what you're talking about. The worst is, we don't even agree with whatever you're talking about. He continued, quote, "Trump's first plan could become a very good basis for negotiations." Of course, because it was drafted in Kremlin. "The time will come and Russia will substantially engage with the U.S. plan for Ukrainian settlement. Discussing the security architecture without the Europeans is impossible. They will be needed at some stage, but Russia has been given a draft of the American plan for Ukraine, Kremlin plan, which largely corresponds to the spirit of Alaska." What the hell were you doing in Alaska? There were no agreements in Alaska, but every time you bring up Anchorage, whenever you want Trump to remember something, because you showed him a video. Yeah? So this message is for Trump. Remember, we still got this. Whatever they got on him, we got it. Okay? Just for you, he says Russia is interested in achieving its goals precisely through diplomatic means and remains open to negotiations. Russia is bombing everybody, right? I mean, they're bombing Kharkiv, they're bombing Kyiv, they're bombing everyone. I mean, just literally civilians. There's this heartbreaking video that I shared on X. I reshared somebody's post from Ukraine, where is a high riser with just civilians in it, innocent Ukrainians who were asleep, and you had 6 stories that collapsed upon each other. The picture is here, but it doesn't do it proper justice. It's in the middle. And so those 6 stories collapsed upon each other, and there was a boy who was on the first floor and it stuck with the 6th one. And so it was a mess. It was just, some people died, some people survived, and everybody was digging each other out. And it's just, and somebody who was in that mess recorded that video, and just the screams. And then today, just a few hours ago, they bombed another building in Kyiv where people were screaming. They were upon the fire, right? So if you have any images of 9/11 stuck in your head, that's exactly what Ukraine is going through on a daily basis. No, not the same. Thank God, not the same number of people dying, nowhere near to compare to 9/11, but just the images of it when people are screaming, jumping, all that type of story. So in order not to provoke anybody, we will not be reviewing these videos here. Now, meanwhile, there is a coalition of the willing and impotent, and they met today, some virtually, some in person, to discuss. They were good, bad, and ugly. They had all of it there. So what I want to show you, this is first of all how it looked like. It was chaired by Starmer and Macron. Take a look.
Coalition of the Willings. So I suggest to divide our meeting into 2 parts, if you agree. I will give the floor to Keir right now, and after that perhaps we could have an intervention from Volodymyr to debrief us about the discussions in Geneva.
And Lobo, thank you for sharing the stream. I appreciate you. Now, some things were sort of like a Dear Santa messaging. That's just when President Macron, with all the good, intention, mentioned that once the ceasefire is achieved, then France and Germany and Finland and England will put forces near Odessa and Kyiv to teach Ukrainian forces how to protect their cities. Bless your heart. If Ukrainian forces learned anything within those 4 years, and actually 10 plus years since 2014, is how to protect their cities. Also, Russia will not be, of course, accepting any of it, and you just gave them another point to talk about during their nightly propaganda shows on state television. But okay, he meant it well. Now, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen said that partners in the coalition of the willing see encouraging progress in peace negotiations, emphasizing strong transatlantic unity. Okay, this message was from Marco Rubio, who joined this call virtually and was reporting to the president of the United States. Now, she stressed that sanctions continue shrinking Russia's war capacity and that pressure must remain until Moscow shows genuine willingness for peace. She cited Russia's most recent attacks on Kyiv, including violations of Moldovan and Romanian airspace, this is where drones fell, as reminders that Ukraine's security is Europe's security. Europe will stand firmly behind Ukraine in negotiations ahead, including over financing, especially the use of immobilized Russian sovereign assets. Now, Zelensky said he's ready to meet with Trump and is open to accepting most of the peace plan. He also suggested European partners join his talks with the US president. Now, without any further ado, I did get a hold of the entire video of what Zelensky said. This is 3 minutes and 30 seconds. I really would love for you to listen from him, get the information from him directly, because all this clickbait that you are imposed to is coming from this speech when people are taking little phrases and flipping and making breaking news out of it. So if you do, please engage with this for 3 minutes and 30 seconds. You will not be fooled. All right, let's take a look.
Thank you so much, dear friends. Emmanuel, Kira, Friedrich, Marco, Mr. Secretary, and Antonio, Ursula, and all, of course, all the leaders of the coalition. Truly appreciate that you all stand with us, with Ukraine, and that we are working together for our shared security. Right now, when it comes to security, there is nothing to divide between us, and there are no separate issues. Everything affects all of us, and everyone needs to be fully informed. We firmly believe security decisions about Ukraine must include Ukraine. That was our position in Geneva, and always security decisions about Europe must include Europe, and the same applies to Canada, Japan, Australia, New Zealand, other countries, and every nation. And this is simply fair, and it actually works, because when something is decided behind the back of the country or its people, there is always a high risk that it simply will not work. And we all believe that people should decide their own future, and this is in particular what sets us apart from regimes like the one in Moscow. So thank you all for moving forward together and staying coordinated and united. Friends, now we have a good result from Geneva, and from the meetings and talks that took place there, Ukraine has the framework developed by our teams in Geneva. That framework is on the table, and we are ready to move forward together with the United States of America, with personal engagement of President Trump, and with Europe, with leaders, and with all partners who have their strengths and capacity to help. And I'm ready to meet with President Trump, and there are sensitive points to discuss. We have them still, and we think that the presence of European leaders could be helpful. And let's discuss some key issues today in a closed format. But we must also not lose sight of reality. Russia's war against us is not in the past. It's happening every single day. Every day Russia takes Ukrainian lives. Just last night, thanks for warm words and the words of support from you, friends. So last night there was yet another massive attack on our country, so we cannot relax or forget that Ukraine still needs defense support, security support, support of our resilience every day. And as long as Russia has not taken real steps toward demobilization, real steps to shut down its war machine, steps that would clearly show that Russia is serious about ending this war of aggression. We do not have the right to stop working to support Ukraine, to support our people, and to support our collective security, and we do not have the right to demobilize ourselves. We must protect lives, strengthen air defense, and hold the front line, keep sanctions against Russia, finally channel frozen Russian assets to bolster Ukraine protection, and work out finally the doable framework for the deployment of the reassurance force Ukraine of the coalition of the willing by signing of a relevant memorandum of understanding. Please let us keep working at 100% for security as we have before. And thanks so much.
His English got so much better within the 4 years. Regardless to that. Now, what Zelensky was referring to is what Russia did in Kyiv. Take a look. So CHP-5, CHP-6 power plants were hit, causing widespread outages. Residential areas, as you saw here in multiple districts, suffered direct hits. A drone flew directly into an apartment in the Rusanivka area. That's exactly what you saw. A 22-story building in Pechersk, a 9-story block on the left bank were heavily damaged. Attacks extended far beyond Kyiv. Explosions, blackouts, and strikes were reported in Odessa, Sumy, Kharkiv, and other regions. On average, Ukrainians enjoy only 3 hours of electricity and 3 hours of water. We're not talking about warm water a day. Meanwhile, on the better side of the news, Ukrainian suicide drones destroyed Russia's Beriev. Do I have a picture? Yes, here. Russia's Beriev A-60 airborne laser aircraft in Taganrog, where they parked it, a rare and sophisticated experimental platform meant for high-energy laser development. So this is some really good news. Now, on the other side, we just got the information when I was going live here from the German Foreign Service. It is here. They decided to put it up that Russian or Putin eyes the EU and NATO. Our intelligence services are issuing urgent warnings. At the very least, Russia is creating the option for itself to wage war against NATO by 2029. We have to deter further Russian aggression together with our partners and allies. So, also, on another side, UK defense intelligence update came up today, again, as you see here, November 25th, and this is focusing on the Russia's internal operations. So, in short, Russia continues tightening control of its domestic information space since 2022. New amendments would allow the FSB, this is their internal intelligence service, to cut off individual telecom subscribers without court orders, citing state security. So suddenly your phone stops working. Suddenly your, internet stops working without court orders needed. You'll be still charged, but you have no access. This expands on the 2019 sovereign internet law, enabling isolation from global networks. Roskomnadzor, this is their national authority that oversees the usage of internet and phones, believe it or not. Their censorship powers continue expanding. Independent outlets warn of accelerating surveillance. Ukrainian officials say these measures are a tool of repression masked as security. And certainly, what does U.S. do? And I just mentioned that Witkoff, we now have transcripts and audio recordings, how Witkoff did engage with the Russians, with Yuri Ushakov, Putin's right hand, if you will, before Putin were to talk to Trump. And here I would love to read to you a little bit of a transcript. Witkoff says to Ushakov, maybe he, right, Putin, says to President Trump, Steve and Yuri discussed a very similar 20-point plan to peace, and that could be something that we think might move the needle a little bit. We're open to those sorts of things, to explore what it's going to take to get a peace deal done. He's referring to the Israeli deal. Now, me to you. I know what it's going to take to get a peace deal done. Donetsk and maybe a land swap somewhere. But I'm saying instead of talking like that, let's talk more hopefully, because I think we're going to get to a deal here. And I think Yuri, the president, will give me a lot of space and discretion to get to the deal. Yuri says, I see. Witkov. So if we can create that opportunity that after this I talk to Yuri and we had a conversation, I think that could lead to a big stuff. Yuri, okay, that sounds good. Sounds good. Witkov, and here's one more thing. Zelensky is coming to the White House on Friday. Yuri, I know. Witkov, I will go to that meeting because they want me there. But I think if possible, we have to call with your boss before that Friday meeting. Boss being Putin. Yuri, before, yeah. Witkov, correct. Yuri, okay, I got your advice. So I discuss that with my boss, and then I come back to you. Okay, Witkov. Okay, Yuri, I'll speak to you soon. Great. Thanks so much. Thank you, Witkov. Bye. So, you know what I hate is when we talk about things that we have no authority over, but there's many things you and I have no authority over. But also we continue discussing, Trump said this, he said that. Trump is changing his opinion. He's not changing his opinion. Can we just put some things to rest? Trump works together with Russians through Witkov, through whatever, maybe his own, I don't know the reason why he works for them or acts on their behalf, aiding them and their agenda and their murderous ambitions, but he does. This is what matters, right? So how do you confront that? You take it as a fact, right? You stop hoping that something will change, especially if you're European, and you start seeing what can you do? Because in fact, you can do quite a lot. You do have Russian money, and you can use it. You can use it legally, you can use it morally, and you can use it economically. You can use it to get the aid to Ukraine so it can produce whatever they need to defend their skies at scale. Because right now the defensive apparatus is very much dependent on aid from USA, and that's why everybody is bending a knee, pilgrimaging to DC, hopefully, trying to stroke Trump's ego so he doesn't shift away from Ukraine. Ukraine did not get any offensive ability during the Biden administration. Hence, they produced the Flamingo and they came up with missiles to hit Moscow, and that is what they do. And these are the results of those missiles and drones, right? But they didn't do much for the defensive ability because this came through of course, our European allies from DC. So use the money to provide this to Ukraine so they can get the capacity. Now, what Congress could do, if you're still up for the job, and anybody who is having any type of access to Trump, from people who ask him questions to those who advise him, why don't you give him an idea to use his big friendship with President Xi Jinping and ask him what role in reality, off the record, between them and the translators, what does he play with Russia? What does he want from Russia? He's helping Russia. Russia has advanced its drones and their capabilities because of the sponsorship from China, because of the drones that are developed there. Yes, it is very much benefiting Xi Jinping because he's advancing his capabilities for any war, right, potential or whatever, with US, for instance. So he's using Putin and his murderous, ambitions to up his own tech, right? And he's paying for it. But Russia, and I'll have a readout soon, is running out of money. They can pay their own forces, and okay, they don't give a shit about that. They lost more than 1 million people. They don't give a shit about that either. But they're also losing territory to China. China is very much interested in outer Manchuria. You can download a map and see. Vladivostok is already having, Chinese names all over their own maps, and they moved people. They have free migration there. So there's Chinese people living in Vladivostok, becoming mayors, becoming lawmakers, and hence, really occupying the area, if you will. So Xi Jinping has a big advantage here. And he, having Putin depend on him will ultimately lead to, first, of course, weaker Europe, right? Engaged United States. So they're not really occupied with Taiwan. And, well, the Russia that is depending on him. And now Russia is also giving, not selling, giving alongside the gas, right? The gas station is also running out of gas a little bit. They were providing gas and are providing gas to China at price value without any markup for all this help, right? But now they're also giving them minerals in exchange for building roadways. The first roadway of such is being built in Siberia. Siberia, that China is very much interested in. So if there is anybody smart left in this administration, why wouldn't you advise Trump to talk to Xi Jinping about what his goals with Russia are? And perhaps you could, use that as leverage when you speak to your best bud Putin. Of course, all of this is non-existent if you speak with either of them, Xi Jinping and Putin, while you wear your rosa, your pinky glasses. When you admire them. If you come to the meeting or any conversation with them from the point of love and admiration, and you look at them with those heart, then nothing can work either. But if there is hope for Trump to speak as man-to-man type of story, he can monetize it too. He wants to monetize everything, but here he could truly monetize it. Because at this point, and what we need to state as a fact, Russia has built first 4 years ago they had ambitions. 10 years plus they started the war. It wasn't a full invasion. Trump was president during that time. He didn't stop that war. So whenever you hear him, this war would have never happened if I was president. He was president. The war did happen. Period. End of story. Now, but at this point, Russia has put such a big mechanism that is based on shadow fleet. It has so many people and countries involved that do benefit off of it. China is benefiting, when it comes to tech and advancement, minerals and gas, right? North Korea is benefiting, Iran is benefiting. There's so many who are benefiting. The hubs, right? The hubs in Cyprus, the hubs in, elsewhere. They all are benefiting from all this big structure. They also have built military structure as well. Also, don't forget that the biggest battles are now handled by drones. They also receive soldiers from China itself as well. They're special mercenaries. They receive them from Colombia. They receive them, and Colombia also has some soldiers fighting on behalf of Ukraine, to put a thing as well. But those are hired people. They're also receiving North Koreans to fight on their behalf. So, in this constellation here, it will take more than diplomacy to convince Putin to even consider sitting at that table and consider even signing any type of deal. The pressure has to be economic, right? You have to pressure Russia economically. You have to pressure them diplomatically by excluding them, not by dangling G8 in front of them, by excluding them. Why are they still at the UN Security Council while they violate UN Charter? Why are they highlighting UN Security Council and setting the agenda in October of this year? October that just ended less than a month ago, while killing people. I always have this visual. Why are they still there? No offense to pigs, you're lovely. But exclude them diplomatically, pressure them economically, pressure them militarily, finally. Provide funds to Ukraine, use the frozen assets, allow Ukraine to pressure Russia militarily. diplomatically, economically, militarily. Then Putin will consider sitting at that table and talking to all of you. At this point, you're just abusing the victim. What can you give me more? Do you give it? Do you not give it? Do you give it? Do you not give it? It's boring. Your first season of your show, right? And now Trump will be changing some actors, right? He announced for season 2. Susie Wiles, not making the cut, allegedly. But your show is boring. Where is that Trump that was firing people? Where is he? At this point, he's just mesmerized by anybody who has balls and a beard. He's spraying perfume all over the table. He's changing his life. He's even dress, the way he dresses after meeting Mamdani. There's this infamous meme at this point, once called Habibi. Now he's all over the place. Where is that Trump? That Trump is not there. And so Europe, you have to wake up and realize that, no, you cannot rely on them. You have to, at scale and at speed at this point, stop relying on US. And if you want to portray it as you still rely on the US and you want to thank Trump in every speech that you make and all of this, please do. This is fine. We're good. We're used to it at this point. But do the work. That's just my 2 cents. Maybe you agree, maybe you don't agree. Jules Refine says Trump is not a friend of Ukraine. No. Tidy Whitey acts on their behalf, period. The hopium and clickbait. Yes, people have a hard time understanding that evil is real and the devil's working together. Exactly. No offense to the pigs, right? The pigs are cute, right? Quiet piggy. Okay, so on another note, this is somebody who does act, right? South Korea's Coast Guard boarded and detained a Chinese fishing vessel that entered territorial waters. Special equipment was used. Violators were detained. I do believe I do have a video because that video is freaking fantastic. Yes, I do. Enjoy.
저녁 불법 조업 단속 중 그물을 끊고 도주하던 중국어선 두 척을 해경 고속단정 두 척이 약 11km를 추격한 끝에 붙잡았습니다. 중국 어선들은 우리 배타적 경제수역에서 허가를 받지 않고 40상자 분량의 자벌을 잡다 해경이 나타나자 도주를 시작했습니다. 해경은 어선 선장과 선원 등 8명을
So, despite China being nuclear superpower, right? Real nuclear superpower, not like Russia that still relies on whatever they got in that Budapest deal from Ukraine. That's a real superpower. Did you hear a mushroom boom after that? No. No escalation occurred. A reminder to Europe that violators can be stopped. Board them, sink them, shoot them down. These vessels are tied to China's maritime militia. Those are not fishermen. And those are used for gray zone provocations. The problem is that with these authoritarian leaders, when they were on hot mic, and Xi Jinping was talking with Putin. Putin said, we can live to 150 years if we start harvesting organs. And Putin infamously take bath in blood and milk and whatever, and virgins and virgin blood, whatever they do. But they're so afraid of dying. They're so afraid of ending all this. They're so afraid of everything. So for them to consider nuking somebody, knowing that it will take seconds to be nuked in return, highly improbable. Now, meanwhile, Taiwan's Premier Cho Yung-tai said a return to China is not an option for the island's 23 million people after Xi Jinping pressed sovereignty claims in a call with Trump. And I want to remind you, we do have an interview with the senior national security advisor of Taiwan. I did interview him for about 10 minutes. We discussed all this. So please go and watch. It's on the same YouTube channel. It's free. There's no paywall. Spend 10 minutes and learn about Taiwan from Taiwan. Now, as I call it, moments, and here I'm quoting J.D. Vance. He says, after 4 years of house prices doubling, young people feel priced out of the American dream. A welfare fraud scandal in Minnesota. Welfare fraud scandal in Minnesota. Funneling our tax dollars to literal terrorist groups. An innocent woman was set on fire. The Obamacare insurance system is buckling. Our country is 38 trillion in debt. But what really fires up the beltway of GOP is that the Trump administration may finally bring a 4-year conflict in Eastern Europe to a close. The level of passion over this one issue when your own country has serious problems is bonkers. Show some passion for your own country. JD, get a book. Read it if you can. At this point, you're reciting Kremlin points. Knowingly or unknowingly, I guess knowingly. Lavrov, horseface, said, the war that the West has unleashed against us through Ukraine has united our people. The amended peace plan must reflect the spirit and letter of understandings reached between Putin and Trump in Alaska. Another note for Trump. Don't forget what happened in Alaska. What happened in Alaska? Was there Baba treatment? Because sounds like it. Now, Trump tweeted about progress of this illegal 28 points of surrender, insisting that it is still relevant. And rumors, of course, persist that Zelensky may visit Mar-a-Lago over Thanksgiving, though some key issues are not discussed yet or agreed upon, or as media calls it, minor issues. They said Zelensky agreed to everything. There's just minor issues. You know what those minor issues are? Minor issues, I would say, well, what paper are we using for this agreement? What color of the ink will be there? Minor issues, right? Are we meeting over lunch or dinner or just coffee? Yeah? No. The issues they have not agreed upon is occupied territories and security guarantees. The two main issues that Ukraine is starting this whole shit about. So, meanwhile, some quotes. Former EU diplomat Joseph Borrell, who was head of European Commission at some point, with the 28-point plan, he says, Trump's United States can no longer be considered an ally of Europe. Europe must acknowledge that shift. I would say not shift, but shit. Anyway, good. Estonian Parliament Foreign Affairs Chair Marko Mihkelson, quote, Russia will not be stopped by diplomatic rhetoric, but by real power and deterrence. Europe can stop subsidizing the Russian war machine by ending Russian energy purchases and using frozen assets, end quote. Hallelujah, Mazel Tov, because here we arrive on the same issue. Even France is, hugging Prime Minister Carney and Johannesburg at the G20 and then deciding to make the purchases from Russia because whatever they purchase costs 4 cents less per unit, around 500,000 less. Why'd you do that, President Macron? You were hugging Prime Minister Carney so tightly. Also, since Trump did a way out or gave Orban, who's coming to the White House on the 28th of this month, he excluded Hungary from any sanctions for buying the Russian oil and energy and all, and gas, because they're, as Trump calls it, not near any waters. And apparently he believes that all this can be transported only by ship. So since then, right, Hungary and Slovakia are free to buy whatever they buy from Putin. And they became a hub where Europe, the same goddamn Europe, is now using Hungary to buy Russian oil, right, through Hungary, because Hungary got a way out for 1 year. So, now there were claims that Zelensky did not thank Trump a lot. Here's fact check. Since 2022, Zelensky has thanked US at least 78 times. CNN counted all those times. They were doing the real work and journalism today. GOP Congresswoman Maria Salazar said, Maduro understands that we're about to go in. Now we're talking about Venezuela. Venezuela for the American oil companies will be a field day. And seeing is believing, and here you will have to survive this conversation. Take a look.
I mean, I would love to see a change in government. My wife's from Nicaragua. We know how terribly the dictators there rely on Venezuelan oil. But at the same time, a lot of Americans don't want actual U.S. participation in regime change in Venezuela. They would much prefer the Venezuelans to do it on their own. Do you think the pressure that Maduro has received will force him to leave on his own?
Oh, I think Maduro is not Fidel Castro. Maduro is not a brave boy. So now that he has understood that he's on that very nefarious list of the terrorist organization, that the airspace above Venezuela has been closed off and the commercial airlines from the United States are not flying, he's understanding that we're about to go in. He understands that he has been our enemy for the last 25 years. Venezuela, for those Americans who do not understand why we need to go in, basically for three reasons. You're in Fox Business. Venezuela, for the American oil companies, will be a field day.
Okay. China's foreign ministry said, quote, China has never recognized the so-called, now I have to butcher it, Arunachal Pradesh, illegally set up by India. Zangnan is China's territory. So when you violate UN charter by allowing Zelensky and whoever to concede to giving up land and occupied territories, the party will be just starting. You will remember these crazy days as a little warm-up where you had some cushy lifestyle. Because when you violate UN charter that guarantees sovereignty, when you violate Vienna Convention, when you violate Helsinki, you violate everything, then the party begins. Then China will show you every single thing on the map that they don't agree with, and any border, right, will be now questioned. And if you're not familiar with the fact that every neighbor in this world always has something, against their neighbor, there is always something they don't really agree upon, then all of this will become for grabs. And that's where the World War III starts and quite ironically ends. So, some quick national news. Let's talk about the most important part. The Trump pardoned Gobble and Waddle. Okay. Gobble and Waddle. Here you go.
That's going to be saved. The turkeys being pardoned today go by the names of Gobble and Waddle. When I first saw their pictures, I thought we should send them... I shouldn't say this. I was going to call them Chuck and Nancy. But then I realized I wouldn't be pardoning them. I would never pardon those two people. I wouldn't pardon them. I wouldn't care what Melania told me. Darling, I think it would be a nice thing to do. I won't do it, darling.
Then Waddle, or Gobble, I think it was Waddle, who waddled into the press room at the White House, and Fox News Doocy asked her, what do you think about Ukraine? What shall we do with Ukrainians? Well, that is not funny. Okay. Some people just don't deserve the oxygen, but okay. And then he did pardon the Waddle, or the Gobble, you decide. And in response, Trump gobbled himself.
Anyway, are you ready? Gobble.
Oh, there you go.
I just want to tell you this, very important. You are hereby unconditionally pardoned.
He said, praise the Lord.
Praise the Lord. There you go. You're right.
Those two pardons were added to more than 1,600 pardons he has granted so far this term. Also, this occasion is usually very friendly. It's a family affair. It's, all fun and games. It's preparing for Thanksgiving. It's, kids are in presence. And kids were in presence, and that's what the president talked about.
Woman with the burning, they burned the woman. To be talking about that now, they burned this beautiful woman riding in a train. A man was arrested 72 times. 72 times. Think of that.
Okay, now some national news. EPA announced $3 billion to reduce lead in drinking water. The Environmental Protection Agency said Tuesday it will distribute $3 billion in new funding to U.S. states to reduce lead contamination in drinking water systems. An additional $1.1 billion in previously announced funding is being released to accelerate lead removal efforts. Also, the White House rejected a report from MS Now, the former MSNBC, claiming that Trump is considering firing FBI Director Kash Patel for using SWAT to protect his own girlfriend. The outlet cited three unnamed individuals alleging growing frustration with Patel's negative headlines. The administration dismissed the report as false. The bipartisan state attorneys general warned Congress not to block AI laws or state AI laws. Attorneys general from 35 states and the District of Columbia, both Republicans and Democrats, urged congressional leaders not to preempt state-level regulation, calling it disastrous for any consequences to occur if states are prevented from addressing risks posed by AI technologies. Right? Infamously, Trump wants to regulate AI straight up through executive orders himself. Now, the FBI and U.S. Capitol Police are coordinating the schedule to schedule interviews with the 6 Democratic lawmakers who recently called on U.S. service members to reject unlawful commands. This reads like an opening of Saturday Night Live. Meanwhile, Kevin Hassett, if you don't know how he looks like, that's him here on top left. Kevin Hassett. Who he is? Well, he is at this point economic advisor, right? That's the one who tells you how great our economy is doing. But he has become the leading contender to serve as the next chair of the Federal Reserve. Now, all this is according to Bloomberg. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said that he's completing a second round of interviews and noted that Trump may announce his pick before Christmas. So, U.S. producer prices increased 0.3% in September, driven by higher energy costs and tariff-related price pressures, according to Labor Department that doesn't understand what statistics are. So all of this is questionable, to say the least. The rebound follows 0.1% decline in August and matched economists' expectations. Okay. A coalition of U.S. states filed a lawsuit Tuesday seeking to halt the Trump administration's new restrictions on over $3 billion in federal grants that fund permanent housing and support services for people experiencing homelessness. Also, U.S. government ran $284 billion budget deficit in October alone, according to delayed Treasury data affected by the recent federal shutdown. The figure reflects shifts in benefit payment schedules and record tariff revenue. What revenue? That tariff revenue goes from our money to Trump, and he says it's revenue. It's tax on us. Anyway, okay. The Trump administration directed the State Department to classify countries with abortion access, LGBTQ plus protections, DEI initiatives, or hate speech regulations as human rights violators, marking a major shift in U.S. human rights assessments. So if you live in Canada, how dare you to provide care to all of these people? How dare you, to respect human rights? Who are you even? Okay, so White House tours will resume next week if you want to come, after being paused in September for demolition of the East Wing. Now you can smell all this asbestos in person. The construction makes a way for a new $300 million, now it's $300 million presidential ballroom / bunker, a project Trump has vowed to finish before leaving office. Meanwhile, First Lady Melania Trump welcomed the official White House Christmas tree from Michigan, delivered by Clydesdale drawn carriage. We saw it yesterday. She paused and left. It took 90 seconds. So, Doge is no more. Scott Cooper, director of the Office of Personnel Management, said government's cost-cutting agency that steals your data, Doge, previously promoted by Elon Musk, effectively doesn't exist, so you can trace whatever the hell they did, despite having 8 months left in its mandate. Now, the CDC has quietly approved Dr. Ralph Lee Abraham as its deputy director. During the COVID-19 pandemic, Abraham promoted discredited treatments such as ivermectin, and as Louisiana's Surgeon General, he halted the state's mass vaccination campaign. Enjoy. Now, some quick global news. 5 months after launching its expansion into the United States, the BBC, is facing a threatened $5 billion lawsuit from Trump, while governments long hostile to independent journalism have vowed to increase pressure on the broadcaster. The network's head of news, Deborah Turness, has now departed. Also, there was a very famous author who is I posted his video that he presented a series of lectures, and now the lecture was censored by the BBC because he mentioned that Trump is the first openly corrupt American president, and this was, or the biggest openly corrupt president. That was deleted from the lecture. So, as to U.S. intelligence, they have assessed that Chinese military personnel were deployed at UAE military base after Washington was denied access to the site. Analysts say that the UAE is also supplying Sudan's rapid support forces with Chinese-made drones and equipment. See, this is also something that Trump could discuss with Xi Jinping. Speaking of Xi Jinping and Trump, Trump said that he has accepted an invitation from Chinese President Xi Jinping to visit China in April, and in return has extended an invitation for bilateral state visit. And Xi Jinping is also invited, of course, to come to Miami for G20 next year, which US is hosting. Meanwhile, Putin arrived in Kyrgyzstan, and his welcome was had dances and birds, and why don't you see it for yourself? It's a joy-ish. Take a look. Then there was music and more dances. Altogether, Kyrgyzstan has had hope before until they elected a government that is very pro-Putin and surrendered everything to Putin. So now they're literally dancing to whatever he tells them to dance to and supply him with everything they have to offer. So regular visit. Meanwhile, NATO announced that allied foreign ministers will convene at NATO headquarters on December 3rd. All of this will be chaired by Mark Rutte. Poland conducted 2 successful subordinate rocket launches at Ustka test range. One was Polish 3-stage rocket tested on Monday. The second was the privately developed Perun rocket, which reached an altitude of 50 kilometers. Officials hailed the test as major advances in domestic defense capabilities. Now, facing mounting war-related costs and insufficient funding for infrastructure. Now, the official readout. Russia is offering China access to rare earth mineral deposits in exchange for building a new railway in Siberia, deepening Moscow's economic dependence on Beijing. If you control the railways, Meanwhile, Sweden. Sweden is evaluating the purchase of cruise and ballistic missiles with ranges of up to 2,000 kilometers, a capacity that would allow strikes far inside Russian territory. The distance from Stockholm to Moscow is roughly 1,200 kilometers. According to Chief of Defense Staff Carl Johan Edström, Sweden intends to obtain these weapons in the event Russia attacks NATO and Article 5 is triggered. He noted that Finland already possesses similar long-range systems, and Sweden aims to match those capabilities as part of its deterrence posture. I would correct it because, yes, they're being diplomatic. They say if Article 5 is triggered. If Article 5 is triggered, US should help, right? This is if Article 5 is triggered and veto it. So, a long-dormant Ethiopian volcano, Haile Gubby, erupted for the first time in 10,000 years. I posted a video a couple of days ago, blanketing nearby communities in ash and sending plumes across Yemen, Oman, Pakistan, and India. No casualties were reported, but the eruption is causing severe disruption to farming. And obviously also the air traffic was suspended. Now, meanwhile, Sudan's Rapid Support Forces, the so-called RSF, right? RSF, declared a 3-month unilateral ceasefire in the country's civil war. The announcement came shortly after Sudanese army rejected U.S. and Gulf-backed truce proposal, calling it biased. Meanwhile, Turkish authorities announced the arrest of an espionage cell allegedly operated by UAE intelligence following monitoring by Turkey's intelligence agency. According to Istanbul public prosecutor, the cell has been gathering sensitive information on high-ranking Turkish state officials and on defense industry structures. Police detained 3 suspects, while a 4th individual has fled abroad. A detention warrant has been issued for the fugitive. Now, you just heard what UAE is partnering with China and what they're doing there. And they're kicking out US, right? That is praising, well, in the face of Trump, praising UAE. And since UAE is working with China, monitoring what Turkey does, Turkey being NATO partner with the strongest NATO military, right? Second strongest. That kind of looks Chinese and smells Chinese here. So no, good for Turkey. The EU plans to introduce new regulations obliging foreign investors, including Chinese companies, to provide local jobs, technology transfers in certain strategic sectors such as batteries. The draft rules are expected to be unveiled on December 10th. You really trust China? You trusted US, and look where you are now. And now you're trusting China to build and provide jobs, so your economy will depend on them. Like, do you learn anything, like, ever? Maybe no. It's like this girl that keeps dating people that keep hurting her, and she just moves them in right away and just puts them on a lease, just because you will share the fridge with me. Like, no, it's not a good boyfriend here. Now, President Trump signed executive order ordering federal agencies to examine whether Muslim Brotherhood chapters in Egypt, Jordan, and Lebanon should be labeled foreign terrorist organizations. A final determination is expected within 75 days. So probably they're invited to do some pledges, right? Israeli forces killed 3 people in Gaza during current truce. Israeli troops, right, they did that on Monday, saying they were threatening its forces. According to Gaza's health ministry, 342 people have been killed during the current truce. Okay. Meanwhile, Malaysia announced it will ban social media accounts for minors under the age of 16 starting next year, citing concerns about cyberbullying, online scams, and exploitation. Officials say they studied Australia's similar policy, which launches next month. And herewith, I want to announce that this Friday, right, for the deep dive, I know in US people will be celebrating and having a cushy, wonderful weekend, but you can watch it anytime. We're going to have a deep dive on the amount of disinformation we're facing worldwide. What we're going to do is I'm going to dive, and I have already started with that, in all those fine prints that we always, there's a new update on this app. Click, and you click. You don't even read it, right? Have you ever read it? Probably no. The TikToks, the Instagrams, right? The Meta and Twitter and everything. What are they permitted to do with your information? How those algorithms, how are they built? How do they decide what to present to you? And also, what regulations are there in US, in Europe, and elsewhere to regulate social media platforms and the media itself? So we're going to dive in. How does it look in US? What has changed when Trump came into power? And what has changed in Europe? And what are they doing? Do they see what we see? Do they hear what we hear? And so all this disinformation around us, right? Because we're polluting our system, same as our air is polluted, our information space is polluted. It stinks, quite honestly. So we're going to dive into that and see how does it look like? What does China do? What's Russia is doing? What's Europe is doing? What are we here doing? Okay, so now, a suicide attack on security base in northwestern Pakistan killed 3 security officers. The assault involved 2 suicide bombers and an armed gunman. Officials say quick intervention prevented a far deadlier outcome. And finally, I did predict that yesterday, because it was announced, China launched the unmanned Shenzhou 22 spacecraft to Tiangong space station, delivering a replacement return vehicle for astronauts after Shenzhou 20 was damaged by space debris. So they couldn't return back to Earth because their vehicle was damaged. And to end on a funny note, now in your newsletter, you end on the humanity note where you dive into the Shadrach song that is very famous Ukrainian song, but it's known worldwide under very different name. It's very popular in Western Hemisphere, but because of copyright issues, I don't want to play it here because I already, got a strike here for no reason. So it's in your newsletter. Please watch it. It's such a beautiful, performance, and the song. I'm not going to sing it for you. But to end here on a bit of a funny note, dozens of tourists traveled to Buckingham Palace in London after a viral online video advertised a festive Christmas market outside the royal gates. And when they arrived, they found nothing because that viral video was AI generated. Let's listen what they have to say.
I saw this post on Instagram saying there's first time in history Buckingham Palace Christmas market, and I saw those little stores in front of Buckingham Palace, but apparently it was all AI. So we went there thinking it was real, but yeah, we didn't see anything like that.
Because that would have been really cool, but at the same time, there's a bunch of other Christmas markets, so not too disappointed. But it was more like, that's weird that with AI, like I think a lot of people would believe that. Like that's a very believable thing that there would have been a Christmas market here.
Aw, AI generated Christmas market. How bad is that? Tidy Whitey says, I'm excited for a deep dive Friday. All your deep dives have been goldmine for off information that we can't get anywhere else. Thank you. Because I work hard on that. It takes me a whole week or more to deep dive and get the information. So I really think we need to understand what we are exposed to, how it is regulated. It's quite scary. And it's a lot, when you start reading, like I was reading the fine print of TikTok, and they record your face while you look at it. They record your finger, how you move and which buttons and typing and everything. So it's incredible. Honestly, it's incredible. And my goal is to find out, this is US, but how is it in Europe? How is it in China? How is it everywhere, right? Because TikTok is controlled by Chinese. So they look at, that's why some videos, what I found, this little preview, that why videos of dances in your home where you can see your kitchen or any type of home, living situation are going viral rather than anything outdoors or whatever on TikTok, is because they record how your home looks like from inside, or if you see your home with the door behind you in the video. So this is boosted by the algorithm because it gives them more information to this location, because they know your location. Now they know how it looks like inside, which otherwise you would never get, right? It's pretty crazy, yeah? And now, of course, with the news and how it is, controlled everywhere, right? In terms of disinformation, because what I learned here is that we don't hear anything about Europe. European news are non-existent. We only see them when they bend the knee, when they praise Trump. We don't hear them. And this is by design. So we don't know anything about Europe. And whatever we hear about them is those weak people. They have nobody to speak to them, speak on their behalf. They don't do anything. They don't decide anything. Meanwhile, yes, Europe is slow, but when they decide, they put it not just into writing, but into their law and legislation, which is very difficult to remove. So, in that regard, we're going to dive into that as well. So, me too, and on a great topic. Thank you, Mike. Thank you so much. Dmitry says, our Twitter location showing the vast majority of accounts are not who they are. Pay attention to which app store they're interested in. They're registered in. That's what matters. The location itself, from what I've heard, also could be if you travel somewhere, and this shows your current location, right? And so the app store is what matters. Hey, hope you're well. Okay, you guys are talking to each other. Okay, all right. Deep dive. Okay, perfect. Irene says from Batman, of course. Oh, you're talking about the Joker and Avid Ass Hat. Okay, good. I got it. All right. Thank you so much for watching this. Tomorrow I'll bring some videos of not blow up dolls, but like, the things on Thanksgiving when they put a big Snoopy. That's what I'm interested in. I'm going to go and watch them prepare Snoopies, and I'm going to show it tomorrow for our little humanity roundup. Okay, so we also have Honest No Politics. There's interviews, there's deep dive, deep dive. I went to a beautiful Aurora Humanitarian Award ceremony. I did a video on that. There's some interviews with artists and new interviews coming tomorrow with an artist. So please take a look, and so you can watch something calming and non-political. All right. And if you want to join Honest Plus, so you can join us for deep dives and off the record meetings, it's a button join on YouTube underneath, so I can see you there, and we'll meet there. All right. Okay. See you tomorrow, guys. Thank you so much. Timmy is laughing. Everyone's laughing. Okay. Have a good night. Keep your head on a swivel. If you feel festive and you don't want to see my face or hear my voice tomorrow, fine. But please get the factual news, read it or get it on the weekend, and if you're not from US, you have no excuse. You don't have Thanksgiving, honey, okay? You got to watch factual news. All right. So see you tomorrow. Have a good night.